Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku claimed the Relic of Asterion. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The bus ride to the Unauthorized History Museum was a study in the physics of motion and the sociology of teenagers. The vehicle hummed with a low, electric purr, the vibration traveling up through the seats and rattling the teeth of anyone foolish enough to lean against the window. Outside, the city blurred into streaks of gray concrete and vibrant advertisements, the world moving too fast to catch, much like the last few months of Izuku Midoriya's life. Izuku sat near the back, his notebook open on his lap. The pages fluttered slightly from the air conditioning, revealing sketches of hero costumes, support item schematics, and frantic scribbles regarding quirk maneuverability. He wasn't writing, though. He was staring at his right hand. He clenched it into a fist, then relaxed it. 5%. That was his limit. Full cowling allowed him to channel 5% of one for all throughout his body without shattering his bones like glass. It was a miracle compared to where he had started, but in the grand calculus of heroism, 5% was a rounding error. It was enough to move fast, enough to hit hard, but against a true monster, like the creature at the USJ, or someone like Muscular, it felt like trying to stop a tidal wave with a paper umbrella. Midoriya, you're muttering again, a voice said, cutting through his internal monologue. Izuku jumped, nearly dropping his pen. He looked up to see Tsuyu Azui staring at him from the seat ahead, her large, observant eyes blinking slowly. Beside her, Ochako Uraraka offered a sympathetic smile. Sorry, Azui-san. Izuku stammered, instinctively covering his mouth. Just thinking about the exhibit. It's supposed to be rare, right? Call me Tsu, she corrected automatically. And yes. They say the artifacts of the Dark Age collection hasn't left Tokyo in 20 years. It's risky moving items from the dawn of quirks. Risky? Uraraka tilted her head, her brown hair bobbing. Why? Are they radioactive or something? Culturally radioactive, Tenya Ida interjected, chopping the air with a stiff hand as he leaned across the aisle. The dawn of quirks was a lawless era, before the establishment of the Hero Public Safety Commission, before licensing, and before support companies were standardized. The items in this exhibit aren't just tools, they are symbols of anarchy. Many were used by warlords and vigilantes to subjugate entire districts. Nerd talk, Bakugo Katsuki grunted from the seat in front of Izuku. He didn't turn around, but the spiky ash-blonde hair seemed to bristle with irritation. It's a bunch of rusty junk. Who cares what some quirkless losers used 100 years ago because they were too weak to fight with their own power? It's not just junk, Kaken, Izuku ventured, his voice quiet but firm. It's history. That era defined how society reacted to quirks. Plus, the craftsmanship. They didn't have support engineers back then. The people who made these things had to improvise with their own quirks. Some of those items are theoretically impossible to replicate with modern technology. Bakugo scoffed, a sharp, explosive sound. Whatever. Unless it helps me blow things up better, it's trash. At the front of the bus, Aizawa Shoda, Eraserhead, stood up, looking as sleep-deprived as ever. His capture weapon hung loosely around his neck like a scarf, made of industrial steel wool. Quiet down, Aizawa droned, his voice carrying without effort. We're here. Remember, this isn't a vacation. You are here to study the history of conflict. Understanding the past is essential to preventing its repetition. Don't touch anything, don't wander off, and for the love of logic, don't break anything. I don't want to fill out the paperwork. The bus hissed to a halt. The Unauthorized History Museum was a brutalist structure, a monolith of stone and darkened glass that looked more like a fortress than a place of learning. The rain had started to fall, a cold, drizzling mist that coated the pavement in a slick sheen. Class 1A filed out, their hero uniforms replaced by their standard UA school uniforms. The museum was closed to the general public for the morning, a privilege granted to the prestigious hero course. The lobby was cavernous, the ceiling lost in shadows, echoing with the footsteps of 20 aspiring heroes. A curator, a thin man with glasses that magnified his eyes to owl-like proportions, met them. Welcome, UA students. I am Curator Yogi. Please, follow me to the East Wing. The Dark Age exhibit is temperamental. As they walked through the halls, passing displays of pre-Quark era technology and early superhero costumes, mostly spandex and capes, Izuku felt a strange sensation in the back of his neck. It was a low thrum, like a bass note played so deep it was felt rather than heard. He rubbed his neck, glancing around. Kaminari was joking with Kirishima, Yaoyorozu was listening intently to the curator, and Todoroki was walking in silent contemplation. No one else seemed to feel it. They reached the heavy double doors of the east wing. A sign hung above it in jagged, red font, the ERA of Chaos. Yogi pushed the doors open. The room was dimly lit, the spotlights focused entirely on the glass cases arranged in a labyrinthine pattern throughout the hall. The atmosphere was oppressive. The air felt colder here, heavy with the weight of old violence. The dawn of Quarks, Yogi began, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper. A time when the sudden appearance of meta-abilities shattered the social contract. Governments collapsed. Police forces were overwhelmed. In the vacuum of power, individuals rose up. Some to protect, many to conquer. Izuku moved to the nearest case. Inside was a jagged metal bat wrapped in barbed wire that seemed to pulse with a faint purple light. The placard read, "The Pacifier, used by the warlord Irontooth to control the Shibuya district, circa 21XX. Whoa," Kirishima whispered, leaning in. "That looks intense. Not very manly to use a weapon like that on civilians, though." "It was a different time," Tokoemi murmured, his eyes narrowing. A banquet of darkness. Izuku moved deeper into the exhibit, drawn by the invisible thrumming that was growing louder in his head. It wasn't a sound, it was a pressure, a magnetic pull on his very nervous system. He passed a suit of armor made of street signs welded together, a mask made from the skull of a mutant beast, and a pair of boots that looked like they were designed to crush concrete. Then he saw it. At the very center of the room, isolated in a circular clearing, stood a pedestal made of black marble. Encased in a cylinder of bulletproof, cork-resistant glass was a single object, the relic of Asterion. It was a bracer, or perhaps a gauntlet, meant for the right arm. It was forged from a metal that swallowed the light, blacker than the darkest night, yet flecked with tiny, glittering specks that resembled distant stars. The surface was uneven, looking less like it had been hammered and more like it had been grown. It was jagged, with ridges that resembled the fur of a beast or the tectonic plates of a miniature world. The hand section was clawed, the fingers tipped with points that looked sharp enough to sever atoms. But the most striking feature was the center of the forearm piece, a stylized, roaring bull's head, embossed in the metal. Its eyes were empty sockets, yet Izuku felt them staring back at him. "Ah," Curator Yogi said, appearing at Izuku's elbow, making him jump. "You have an eye for the centerpiece, young man." The rest of the class gathered around, drawn by the sheer menacing aura of the object. "What is it?" Uraraka asked, wrapping her arms around herself. "It gives me the creeps." "This," Yogi said, "is the relic of Asterion. Legend says it was created by a pair of brothers during the height of the Chaos era. One was a blacksmith with the power to manipulate the density of metal. The other was a warlord with a minotaur mutation quirk." "A minotaur?" Izuku whispered. He leaned closer, his nose almost touching the glass. "Yes," Yogi continued. "The warlord was a beast of rage. He commissioned his brother to create a weapon that would allow him to channel his immense strength without destroying his own body. You see, the warlord's strength was so great that every time he punched, he shattered his own bones." Izuku froze. A cold chill went down his spine. "Shattered his own bones, just like me." "The bracer was the solution," Yogi explained. "It is said to absorb kinetic feedback and redistribute it. It makes the wearer invincible to their own power. But there was a cost." "There's always a cost with cursed items," Tokoemi muttered. Dark shadow peeked out, hissing at the glass case. "The warlord became addicted to the power," Yogi said ominously. "The bracer didn't just absorb shock, it absorbed adrenaline. It fed on his rage. Eventually, the man was lost, leaving only the beast. He died alone, trapped in a labyrinth of his own making, fighting phantom enemies until his heart burst." "Stupid," Bakugo spat, breaking the tension. "He relied on a crutch, and it killed him." "Typical." "Perhaps," Yogi said with a small, enigmatic smile. But for 10 years, he was the strongest being on the planet. Even All for One avoided his territory. The mention of the boogeyman of the underworld silenced the class. Even Bakugo narrowed his eyes. Izuku stared at the relic. The thrumming was deafening now. It wasn't a noise, it was a heartbeat. Thump thump. Thump thump. It synced with his own. He felt a strange empathy for the object. It looked lonely. It looked hungry. It stabilizes the user, Izuku thought. It stops the recoil. If I had that, I could use 100%. He shook his head violently. No. That's dangerous thinking. It's a cursed item. It's villain tech. All right, move along, Aizawa ordered, though his eyes lingered on the bracer with suspicion. We have a schedule to keep. Next up is the Vigilante Manifesto collection. As the class began to shuffle away, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then total darkness. Don't panic. Ida's voice rang out, ever the class republic. Everyone stay calm and form a perimeter. A low, mechanical grinding sound echoed through the hall, followed by the screech of tearing metal. The emergency red lights bathed the room in a bloody glow. Erase her head. A distorted voice boomed from the ceiling speakers. And the spawn of UA. How fortuitous. We came for history, but we'll take some hostages as a bonus. Villains, Aizawa hissed. His capture weapon flared out, floating around him as his hair stood on end. Everyone, back to the entrance. Now, boom, the wall near the entrance exploded inward. Debris and dust clouded the air, coughing and choking the students. Through the smoke, 5 figures emerged. They wore tactical gear mixed with archaic armor pieces, looking like high-tech scavengers. We are the archaeologists, the lead figure announced. He was a tall man wearing a trench coat made of shifting, rocky plates. He raised a hand, and the floor tiles ripped themselves up, hovering in the air. And we are here to reclaim the past. Scatter! Aizawa shouted, leaping forward to engage the leader. He erased the man's quirk, causing the floating tiles to drop, but a second villain, a woman with hydraulic limbs, lunged at him, forcing him to dodge. Chaos erupted. Die! Bakugo screamed, launching himself at a villain who seemed to be made of living slime. Explosions rocked the enclosed space, shaking the display cases. Izuku found himself pushed back, away from the exit, deeper into the exhibit. Uraraka was with him. Deku-kun! Uraraka shouted, pointing up. Look out! A massive chunk of the ceiling, dislodged by Bakugo's explosion, was plummeting toward them. Smash! Izuku yelled, flicking his finger. The wind pressure shattered the debris, but the recoil stung his finger. He winced. 5% isn't enough for crowd control in a place this fragile. They were cut off from Aizawa and the others. Between them and the exit stood a villain who looked like a walking mountain of muscle and steel. He wore a helmet with a single, glowing red slit. The boy, the brute rumbled. His voice sounded like gravel in a blender. And the girl. Soft targets. Get back, Uraraka-san, Izuku said, his voice trembling but his stance firm. He settled into a low crouch. The brute charged. He didn't use a quirk. He was just fast and heavy. He swung a fist the size of a microwave. Izuku dodged, grabbing Uraraka and diving behind a display case. The brute's fist connected with a pillar, pulverizing the stone. He's fast. Uraraka gasped. I can't get close enough to float him. We need to regroup with Sensei, Izuku said, his mind racing. If we can lure him toward Todoroki's ice wall. No escape, the brute roared. He slammed his hands into the ground. The floor rippled. A shockwave tore through the room, shattering glass cases left and right. Ancient weapons clattered to the floor, and then, the sound of cracking glass behind them. The brute had missed them, but the shockwave had compromised the central display. The bulletproof cylinder housing the relic of Asterion developed a spiderweb fracture. The prize, the brute grunted, his eyes locking onto the black bracer. Boss wants the fist. He charged again, ignoring the students, aiming straight for the relic. He's going to steal it! Izuku shouted. Let him! Uraraka yelled, pulling on Izuku's arm. We need to run! No! Izuku's body moved before his brain could process the logic. If that thing makes people invincible, we can't let a villain have it. Izuku leaped. He channeled 5% into his legs, rocketing over the display case just as the brute swung a massive metal pipe he had ripped from the wall. The pipe smashed into the cracked glass. The cylinder exploded. Shards of reinforced glass flew like shrapnel. The relic of Asterion tumbled through the air, spinning in slow motion. The brute reached for it with a greedy, gloved hand. Izuku was faster. He mid-air dashed, twisting his body. He didn't think. He didn't consider the curse. He just knew he had to keep it away from the villain. He reached out with his right hand. His fingers brushed the cold, black metal. Gotcha, a voice spoke in his head. It wasn't the vestiges of One for All. It was deeper, guttural, ancient. The moment Izuku's palm made contact with the inner lining of the bracer, the metal moved. It didn't clasp shut like a mechanism, it liquefied. The solid metal turned into a thick, black sludge that shot up his arm like a living shadow. Ah! Izuku screamed. It felt like plunging his arm into boiling ice. The substance seared his skin, diving underneath his uniform sleeve, wrapping tight around his forearm, his wrist, his hand. He could feel tiny needles piercing his skin, tapping directly into his nervous system, weaving into his muscles, fusing with his bones. He crashed to the floor, clutching his right arm. The pain was blinding white, flashing behind his eyelids. Deku-kun! Uraraka screamed, rushing toward him. Stay back! Izuku gasped, writhing. The black sludge solidified instantly. The relic was no longer a loose object. It was a part of him. It encased his right arm from elbow to fingertips in jagged, star-flecked armor. The bull's head on the forearm glowed with a faint, crimson light. The brute laughed. You put it on. Stupid kid. That thing will eat your mind. Hand it over. I'll chop it off for you. The brute raised the metal pipe high, aiming to crush Izuku's skull while he was distracted by the pain. No! Uraraka yelled. She lunged forward, slapping the brute's chest. Zero gravity. The brute began to float, his feet leaving the ground. What the? But momentum was still on his side. He swung the pipe downward. Even floating, the mass of the pipe was immense, and he used the air resistance to spin. The pipe was coming down right on top of Uraraka. She couldn't dodge. She was too close. Izuku saw it. The world slowed down. The pain in his arm vanished, replaced by a sudden, terrifying clarity. The voice in his head roared. Protect. Crush. Izuku didn't calculate. He didn't limit himself to 5%. He felt the One for All energy pool in his right arm, mixing with something darker, something heavier. He scrambled up, stepping in front of Uraraka. He raised his right arm. Smash! But it wasn't a punch. He caught the metal pipe. Clang! The sound was like a bell tolling the end of the world. The massive steel pipe, swung with villainous strength, stopped dead in Izuku's open palm. The relic's clawed fingers dug into the steel like it was wet clay. The floor beneath Izuku's feet cracked into a crater from the transferred force, but Izuku didn't budge. His arm didn't break. He didn't even feel the impact. The brute's eyes went wide behind his helmet. Impossible, that pipe weighs half a ton. Izuku looked up. His green eyes were glowing, green electricity crackling around him. But mixed within the green lightning were streaks of crimson energy, bleeding off the gauntlet. He felt heavy. His mind felt crowded. There was a rage bubbling in his chest that wasn't his own, a desire to not just stop the villain, but to obliterate him. To turn him into paste. Break him. No, Izuku whispered through gritted teeth, fighting the urge. I am a hero, he squeezed. The steel pipe crumpled in his grip, folding like a straw. Get away from her. Izuku pulled back his fist. The relic hummed, the bull's eyes flashing bright red. He felt the One for All power surge, 10%, 15%, 20%. The bracer held the bones together. It drank the stress. He punched the air. He didn't even hit the villain directly. He punched the empty space between them. Asterion smash. The air pressure cannon was visible, a distorted tunnel of wind that looked like a charging bull. It slammed into the floating brute, launching him backward with the force of a freight train. The villain flew across the entire exhibit hall, smashing through 3 display cases and embedding himself into the far concrete wall. The entire room went silent. The other villains stopped fighting. Aizawa froze mid-kick. Bakugo stared, his explosions dying in his palms. Izuku stood there, smoke rising from the black gauntlet. He was breathing hard, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He looked at his hand. The relic felt warm now. Comforting, it whispered to him. More. Give me more. Deku? Uraraka's voice was a tremble behind him. Are you okay? Izuku turned to look at her. For a split second, Uraraka flinched. There was something in his expression, something feral, that she had never seen before. Then, Izuku blinked, and the softness returned. He grabbed his right wrist with his left hand, trying to pry the artifact off. I can't get it off, Izuku panicked, his voice rising in pitch. It won't come off. The leader of the villains, the man in the trench coat, recovered from his shock. He looked at his defeated comrade in the wall, then at the boy with the black arm. Retreat! He barked. We have the data. The vessel has been chosen. Fall back. As the villains created a smokescreen and fled through the hole in the wall, Aizawa didn't pursue. He rushed to Izuku's side. Midoriya! Aizawa knelt, his eyes scanning the gauntlet. Are you hurt? Is it burning you? I don't know, Izuku stammered, tears forming in his eyes. It feels like it's part of my skin. Sensei, I'm sorry. I just reacted. I didn't mean to take it. Aizawa tried to activate his quirk. He stared intensely at Izuku, his hair floating, his eyes glowing red. Erasure. The green lightning of One for All vanished. Izuku felt his strength sap away, but the relic remained. It didn't dissolve. It didn't fall off. The red glow of the bull's eyes dimmed, but the metal stayed fused to his flesh. It's not a quirk creation, Aizawa muttered, deactivating his power. Or if it is, it's mutated beyond simple erasure. It's a physical object now. Recovery Girl was going to have a heart attack. Bakugo stomped over, kicking aside a piece of debris. He stared at Izuku's arm, his face a mixture of fury and confusion. What the hell did you do, Deku? Bakugo growled. That punch, that wasn't just your weird power. That sounded like a monster. Izuku looked down at the black metal. He could feel the pulse again. Thump thump. The Minotaur was sleeping. But Izuku knew, with a terrifying certainty, that it had just woken up for the first time in centuries. And it liked him. I think, Izuku whispered, staring into the black, star-flecked void of the metal. I think I just made a mistake. Outside, the rain turned into a storm. Thunder rumbled overhead, sounding suspiciously like the roar of a bull challenging the sky. The rain had stopped, leaving behind the smell of wet asphalt and ozone. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cruisers painted the exterior of the Musudafu History Museum in a disorienting strobe effect. Izuku Midoriya sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, a shock blanket draped over his shoulders. It was a standard procedure for victims of villain attacks, meant to quell the shaking of adrenaline. But Izuku wasn't shaking. That was the first thing that scared him. Usually, after a fight, after the terror of near death, the exertion of One for All, and the crushing weight of responsibility, he would be trembling. His hands would jitter. His breath would hitch. But now, he sat with the stillness of a statue. His heart beat with a slow, rhythmic thud that felt less like a biological function and more like a war drum echoing in a deep cavern. He looked down at his right arm. The paramedics had tried to cut the sleeve of his school uniform, but the scissors had snapped when they grazed the black metal. They had settled for cutting around the shoulder, leaving his right arm exposed to the cool night air. It didn't feel cold. The relic of Asterion, the cursed bracer, as the curator had called it, radiated a dull, furnace-like heat. It was pitch black, a void in the visual spectrum, flecked with those terrifying star-like glimmers. It encased his hand completely, tipping his fingers in sharp, obsidian claws. It ran up his forearm, bulky and jagged, resembling the tectonic plates of a volcanic landscape, before smoothing out just above his elbow, where it seemed to dig into his flesh with root-like tendrils. Midoriya-kun. Izuku looked up. Detective Tsukachi stood there, his trench coat damp, holding a notepad. His expression was a mixture of professional detachment and deep, personal concern. Beside him stood All Might, in his skeletal, true form, huddled in an oversized yellow raincoat that made him look like a deflated scarecrow. "Detective," Izuku said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Deeper. Heavier. "We've secured the villains," Tsukachi said, clicking his pen. "The one you engaged is currently being extracted from the concrete wall. He has multiple fractures, but he'll live. He's also hysterical. He keeps screaming about a demon's grip." Izuku flinched. "I didn't mean to hurt him that badly. I just wanted to stop him." "I know," Tsukachi said softly. "My quirk tells me you're being truthful. You acted in defense of Uraraka-san. Under the Good Samaritan laws and your provisional license status, you're clear of legal trouble for the use of force." Tsukachi's eyes drifted down to the arm. "But we have a problem with the asset." All Might stepped forward. His sunken eyes were fixed on the black metal gauntlet. He looked pale, even for him. "Young Midoriya," All Might rasped. "Can you move your fingers?" Izuku nodded. He flexed the clawed hand. The metal plates shifted silently, sliding over one another with the fluidity of skin rather than the clunkiness of armor. It felt natural. Too natural. "Can you take it off?" All Might asked. "I tried," Izuku whispered. It feels like pulling on my own finger. If I pull any harder, I feel like I'm going to rip my arm out of its socket." "Recovery girl is en route to Central Hospital," Aizawa said, appearing from the shadows like a wraith. His eyes were dry and bloodshot, his capture weapon hanging loosely. "We're taking you there now. We need to see if this thing is biological, mechanical, or something else entirely." "Sensei," Izuku said, looking at his teacher. "Am I expelled?" "Using unauthorized support items. You didn't bring it with you," Aizawa cut him off, his tone harsh but his eyes soft. "It was forced upon you during a villain incident. It's an injury, Midoriya. Not a fashion statement. Now get in the van." As Izuku stood up, the blanket slid off his shoulders. He reached to catch it with his right hand. The claws snagged the fabric. He didn't even feel the resistance. The blanket shredded instantly, falling to the ground in ribbons. Izuku stared at the ruined fabric. He hadn't used one for all. He hadn't even squeezed. Heavy, he thought. "Everything I touch is going to break." Central Hospital, 2 a.m. The sterile white lights of the radiology department buzzed with an annoying frequency that Izuku felt in his teeth. He was sitting on an examination table, bare-chested, while a team of doctors, recovery girl, and a support course specialist huddled around a bank of monitors. The X-rays were up. "Fascinating," the specialist murmured, though the tone was one of horror. "And completely defying the laws of metallurgy." "Show me," recovery girl demanded, hopping up onto a stool to peer at the screen. Izuku looked too. He wished he hadn't. On the screen, the bones of his right arm, the radius, the ulna, the carpals and metacarpals, were visible in ghostly white. But they weren't alone. Wrapping around the bone structure were dark, opaque tendrils, weaving in and out of the marrow like ivy choking a trellis. The metal of the relic hadn't just clamped onto his skin, it had sent microfilaments through his pores, bypassing the dermis and fusing directly with his skeletal structure and nervous system. "It's parasitic integration," the doctor explained, pointing a laser at the elbow joint. "See here? The artifact has tapped into the ulnar nerve and the median nerve. It's reading his brain signals directly. That's why he has fine motor control. It's not a glove, it's a prosthetic limb that sits on top of the biological one. Can we surgically remove it?" All Might asked from the corner of the room. He was wringing his hands, a rare display of anxiety. "Not without amputating the arm at the shoulder," recovery girl said grimly. The room went silent. Izuku felt the blood drain from his face. "Amputate? If we tried to cut the metal," the specialist added, "we risk severe nerve damage. And that's assuming we can cut it. We tried a diamond tip saw earlier. The saw broke. The metal, it adapted. It hardened at the point of contact." Recovery girl hopped down and walked over to Izuku. She looked tired. She reached out and tapped the black metal with her cane. Clink. Clink. "Does that hurt?" she asked. "No," Izuku said. "I can feel the pressure, but no pain." And the one for all? She whispered, low enough that the other doctors couldn't hear. How does it interact? It feels clogged, Izuku admitted, searching for the right words. Usually, OFA flows like water. But in my right arm, it feels like the power is hitting a dam. It pools there. It builds up pressure. That matches the legends, All Might said, stepping into the light. The relic of Asterion was designed to contain kinetic feedback. It's a shock absorber. So, what do we do? Izuku asked, his voice trembling slightly. I can't go to school with the villain's gauntlet stuck to me. I can't be a hero if I'm a monster. You are not a monster, Midoriya, Aizawa said from the doorway. He walked in, holding a file. Principal Niza has been informed. Since removal is currently impossible without maiming you, we are classifying this as a quirk-induced mutation/support hybrid. You will be allowed to keep it, provided you undergo daily psychological evaluations. Psychological? Izuku blinked. Cursed items from the Dawn era aren't just hardware, young man, Recovery Girl said, her expression stern. They often carry vestiges of their creators or previous users. If you start hearing voices, or feeling urges that aren't yours, you come to me immediately. Do you understand? Izuku looked at the bull's head embossed on his forearm. The red eyes were dull now, dormant. But he remembered the voice in the museum. Crush. I understand, Izuku lied. He didn't want to worry them. He didn't want them to think he was already slipping. The Heights Alliance dormitory. The next morning, returning to the dorms felt like walking onto a stage where he hadn't learned his lines. Izuku had his right arm wrapped in a heavy compression bandage, hiding the jagged metal, but the bulk was impossible to conceal. It looked like he was wearing a massive cast. Midoriya! Tenya Ida was the first to greet him in the common room, his arms chopping the air with frantic energy. We were incredibly worried. Aizawa-sensei told us you were released, but the details were sparse. How is your injury? I'm fine, Ida-kun, Izuku said, forcing a smile. Just some complications with the artifact. I have to wear this wrap for a while. Man, that was scary though. Kaminari chimed in from the sofa, where he was playing a video game. You punched that big guy across the room. I've never seen you hit that hard without breaking your own bones. Yeah, Kirishima added, looking at Izuku with a mix of admiration and confusion. It was super manly, but your vibe was different, bro. You looked furious. I was just adrenaline dumping, Izuku said quickly. He walked toward the kitchen. I'm going to get some water. He needed to get away. He could feel their eyes on him. He could feel the curiosity, and beneath that, the slight edge of fear. They had seen the clawed hand. They had seen the red lightning. He reached for a glass in the cupboard. Habit took over, and he used his right hand. Crunch! The glass shattered in his grip before he even lifted it. Shards of crystal rained down onto the counter. Water and glass dust mixed on the granite. Whoops! Izuku said loudly, his heart hammering. My grip is a little off. Because of the injury. Haha! Uraraka was there instantly, sweeping up the glass with a dustpan. I got it, Deku-kun. Don't touch it, you might cut yourself. Oh, she stopped. She looked at his bandaged hand. The glass shards that had fallen onto his hand hadn't cut him. They had simply bounced off the hard surface beneath the bandages. Right, Uraraka said softly. You can't get cut there anymore. Uraraka-san, Izuku whispered. Thank you for yesterday. You saved me, she said, dumping the glass in the bin. She didn't look at him. But Deku, when you held that pipe, you looked like you wanted to kill him. I didn't, Izuku pleaded. I promise. She turned to him then, her brown eyes searching his. I believe you. But whatever is in that arm, I don't think it follows the same rules as you. The teacher's lounge, private meeting, Asterion, All Might said, placing a cup of tea on the desk. The Minotaur of the Underground. Izuku sat opposite him. The bandages were off now. There was no point in hiding it from All Might. The black metal seemed to drink the light of the room. You know the history? Izuku asked. I know the legends, All Might corrected. My master, Nana Shimura, told me stories about the artifacts of the Dark Age. The relic of Asterion was worn by a warlord named Crete. He wasn't a villain in the modern sense, he didn't rob banks. He was a conqueror. He believed that strength was the only law. All Might leaned forward, his skeletal face grave. The relic allows the user to bypass their body's natural limiters. The human brain limits our muscle output to prevent us from tearing ourselves apart. You know this. It's why One for All breaks you. Your body isn't strong enough to hold the power, so it breaks. And the relic? It acts as an external skeleton, All Might explained. It holds the bone together. It absorbs the kinetic recoil. It effectively grants you the super durability required to use super strength. That sounds good, Izuku said hesitantly. Doesn't it? It means I can use higher percentages of One for All without getting hurt. Physically, yes, All Might sighed. But mentally, the relic was forged with a quirk factor embedded in it. A rudimentary, primitive sentiment. It feeds on aggression. The more angry you are, the stronger the defense it provides. Conversely, it pushes you toward anger to sustain itself. All Might pointed a bony finger at Izuku's chest. One for All is a power of salvation. It is driven by the desire to help. This relic is driven by the desire to dominate. You have two opposing forces inside you now, young Midoriya. If you let the relic drive, you will lose One for All. The vestiges will not cooperate with a tyrant. Izuku looked at the gauntlet. He clenched his fist. The sound of grinding metal filled the quiet room. I won't let it control me, Izuku vowed. I'll use it. I'll make it a hero's tool. All Might smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I hope so. Because if you can't, we will have to find a way to destroy it. Even if it means taking your arm with it. Gym Gamma. 3 days later, the air in Gym Gamma was stale, smelling of concrete dust and sweat. Izuku stood in the center of the TDL, terrain damage level zone. He was wearing his hero costume, though the right glove and arm brace had been discarded. The relic didn't fit under them, and frankly, it provided more protection than the support gear ever could. All right, Midoriya, Cementos called out from the observation deck. Let's start with mobility. 5%. Izuku took a breath. One for All, full cowling. The familiar green lightning crackled around his body. He felt the power course through his veins, but on his right arm, the lightning was different. The green sparks danced over the black metal, turning a sickly, dark chartreuse. The red eyes of the bull glowed faintly. He moved. He bounced off a pillar, while running along the concrete structures. The movement felt standard. 5% was easy. The weight of the relic, which felt like 20 pounds of lead when he was quirkless, felt weightless when full cowl was active. Good, Cementos noted. Now let's test impact. Strike the target. Limit to 5%. Izuku landed in front of a concrete pillar. He pulled back his right fist. Control. Precision. Don't let the anger in. He punched. Boom. The impact was solid. The concrete cracked and cratered. But something was wrong. Izuku stared at the pillar. The damage was deep. Usually, a 5% punch would crack the surface. This punch had pulverized the interior of the concrete, leaving the surface barely touched, but the inside turned to dust. Penetration damage, Izuku muttered. The shockwave traveled through the target. Increase output, Cementos ordered. Let's see 10%. Izuku widened his stance. He dialed up the power. 10%. The strain usually felt like a dull ache in his bones, but in his right arm? Nothing. No pain. Just a hunger. More, the sensation whispered. Feed me. 10% Detroit smash. He struck the next pillar. The entire column exploded. Not just cracked, it disintegrated into gravel. The recoil, which should have jarred his shoulder, was eaten by the relic. The black metal glowed with a brief, intense red heat, venting steam from the jagged ridges. Incredible, Cementos muttered over the intercom. 0 recoil transfer to the user's shoulder. Midoriya, Aizawa's voice cut in. Go to 20%. Izuku froze. Sensei, I can't hold 20% for long. It hurts my whole body. Focus it only in the right arm, Aizawa instructed. Let the relic take the load. Izuku swallowed hard. He closed his eyes. He visualized the egg in the microwave. He visualized the switch. He pushed the power into his right arm. 10%. 15%. 20%. The pain should have been blinding. His bones should have been creaking. Instead, the relic clamped down. The tendrils inside his arm tightened, reinforcing the bone density. The black metal plates shifted, locking into a rigid, heavy form. 20%. Izuku opened his eyes. The world looked different. Around his right hand, the air was shimmering. It looked like a heat haze, but the temperature hadn't risen. The space itself was distorting, curving slightly around the gauntlet. What is that? Izuku whispered. Labyrinth, the voice echoed in his mind. The path is yours to bend. Target acquired, Aizawa said. Destroy the blockade. A massive wall of cement, 3 meters thick, rose up in front of him. Izuku roared. It wasn't a hero's shout. It was a guttural release of tension. He lunged. He didn't just punch, he drove his fist forward like a lance. Asterion impact. Contact. There was no sound at first. Then, a screeching tear in the atmosphere. The wall didn't explode outward. It twisted. The cement spiraled, warping as if caught in a whirlpool of gravity, before violently detonating into dust. The force of the blow created a wind tunnel that blew the windows out of the observation deck. Izuku stood panting, his arms smoking. The red veins on the relic were pulsing brightly now, cooling down slowly. He felt good. He felt powerful. He felt like he could take on the world. Did you see that? Izuku yelled, turning to the observation deck, a wide, manic grin on his face. I didn't feel a thing. I can go higher. Let me try 30%. Stop! Aizawa's voice was amplified, cutting through the euphoria. Stand down, Midoriya. The test is over. Izuku blinked. The manic energy faded, leaving him cold and nauseous. He looked at his hands. He had been shouting. He had wanted to break more things. What is happening to me? Locker rooms. 20 minutes later, Izuku sat on the bench, pouring water over his head. The steam rose from his skin. He was exhausted, but his right arm was buzzing with leftover energy. The locker room door slammed open. Bakugo Katsuki marched in. He was shirtless, a towel draped around his neck, his body glistening with sweat from his own training. He didn't look at Izuku at first. He walked to his locker, ripped it open, and threw his gear inside. The silence stretched, tight as a bowstring. Say it, Izuku said quietly. He was too tired to play games. Bakugo froze. He turned slowly, his red eyes narrowing. Say what, Deku? Whatever insult you have loaded in the chamber, Izuku said, looking at the floor. About the gauntlet. About me cheating, Bakugo scoffed. He walked over, stopping just a few feet from where Izuku sat. The smell of nitroglycerin was pungent. You think I care that you found a cheat code? Bakugo spat. You've always been looking for shortcuts. First you suddenly get a quirk, now you get a magic arm. It's pathetic. It's not a shortcut, Izuku muttered. It's a burden. I can't take it off, Kaken. It's a crutch. Bakugo yelled, his hands popping with small explosions. You're relying on some villain's trash to keep up with me. You think that piece of scrap metal makes you strong? It makes you weak. It proves you can't handle your own power. Izuku stood up. Usually, he would stutter. He would apologize. He would try to explain that he was just trying his best. But the relic was still hot. The adrenaline from the 20% test was still in his blood. And Bakugo's voice, it was so loud. It was annoying. Silence him, the voice whispered. Show him the pecking order. Shut up, Izuku said. It wasn't a shout. It was a flat, cold command. Bakugo blinked, taken aback. Ha! What did you say to me, you damn nerd? I said shut up, Izuku repeated. He raised his head. His eyes were green, but for a fraction of a second, the pupils slid vertically, like a beast's. The air in the locker room grew heavy, the labyrinth effect distorting the light around Izuku just enough to make him look larger, looming. I am trying to figure this out, Izuku said, stepping forward. His right arm hung at his side, the claws twitching. I am trying to survive. I didn't ask for this. But I have it. And if you think I'm weak, Izuku raised the gauntlet. He didn't activate one for all. He just let the sheer, heavy presence of the relic speak. Then try me. Bakugo took a step back. It was involuntary. His body reacted to the threat before his pride could stop it. For one heartbeat, he didn't see Deku, the pebble on the side of the road. He saw something that looked like the silhouette of a minotaur standing in the shadows behind Izuku. Fear. Cold, primal fear spiked in Bakugo's chest. Then, the moment broke. Izuku gasped, clutching his head. The pressure in the room vanished. The beast receded. Izuku stammered, his eyes widening in horror as he realized what he had just done. He looked at Bakugo, who was staring at him with a mix of shock and renewed fury. Kaken, I didn't mean. Don't, Bakugo hissed. His voice was shaking, just a little. Don't you dare apologize. Bakugo slammed his locker shut and stormed out of the room. But he didn't shoulder check Izuku on the way out. He gave him a wide berth. Izuku sank back onto the bench, burying his face in his hands. His left hand gripped his hair. His right hand, the clawed, heavy, cursed thing, rested on his knee, humming with a satisfied dark purr. It liked that, Izuku realized with a sick feeling in his stomach. It liked scaring him. He looked at the star-flecked metal. What are you turning me into? He whispered to the empty room. The relic didn't answer with words. It just throbbed, a slow, steady beat against his own pulse. Thump thump. Heavy as the hand that holds the power. The waiting room for Class 1A was a pressure cooker of nerves, ego, and the distinct, metallic scent of ozone. Izuku Midoriya sat on a bench in the corner, his head bowed. He was wearing the UAP uniform, but the right sleeve had been completely removed. In its place, the relic of Asterion gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. It seemed to have settled since the hospital. The jagged, tectonic plates of the black metal had smoothed slightly, conforming more organically to the shape of his muscles, but it looked no less dangerous. It looked like a limp flake of skin, replaced by the night sky and solidified rage. He traced the star-flecked surface with his left thumb. It was warm. It was always warm now, like a sleeping animal curled around his bones. Midoriya. The voice was cold, cutting through the low murmur of the other students. Izuku looked up. Shoto Todoroki stood before him, his heterochromatic eyes fixed not on Izuku's face, but on his right arm. The room went silent. Todoroki-kun, Izuku said. His voice was deeper than it used to be. The relic pressed against his vocal cords in ways he didn't understand, thickening his tone whenever he felt threatened. Looking at things objectively, Todoroki began, his voice flat, "You are stronger than me. Or rather, that thing attached to you is stronger than me." Izuku flinched. He instinctively pulled his arm closer to his chest. "It's not. I didn't ask for this. It doesn't matter how you got it," Todoroki continued, his gaze piercing. "All Might has his eye on you. You have a connection to him, and now you have a weapon from the Dark Ages grafted to your body. I don't care about the history. I don't care about the curse. I am going to beat you. I am going to prove that my power, my own power, is superior to your borrowed strength." Behind them, Kirishima gasped. "Whoa, hold on. That's uncalled for, Todoroki. Midoriya's dealing with a lot right now." "We're not here to make friends," Todoroki said, turning away. "We're here to stand at the top." Izuku stared at Todoroki's back. A flash of irritation sparked in his chest. It was a hot, prickly sensation. "He thinks you're weak," a voice whispered in the back of his mind. It wasn't words, exactly. It was an impulse, translated by his brain into language. "He thinks you are nothing without the metal. Show him. Break him." Izuku clenched his right fist. The sound was audible, a grinding creak of high-density material. The air in the room seemed to grow heavy for a second. "I'm going for it, too," Izuku said. Todoroki stopped. "I don't know if this arm is a gift or a curse," Izuku said, standing up. The Minotaur presence in his mind surged, pushing his shoulders back, lifting his chin. "But I'm going to use it. I'm not going to be a victim of this artifact. I'm going to be its master. So come at me with everything you have." Bakugo, leaning against the wall, clicked his tongue. "Don't get cocky, Deku. Just because you have a monster's arm doesn't mean you aren't still a pebble." But Bakugo didn't make eye contact. He was looking at the floor, his hands trembling slightly in his pockets. The opening ceremony. The stadium was a cauldron of noise. Tens of thousands of spectators roared as Class 1A marched out onto the field. And here comes the miracle class! President Mike screamed over the speakers. The students who survived a villain attack. Class 1A. As they walked into the sunlight, the giant screens focused on the students. Inevitably, the camera zoomed in on Izuku. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Is that support gear? It looks heavy. Hey, isn't that the kid who crushed the villain at the museum? The one from the news? That arm. It looks scary. Izuku kept his head forward, ignoring the whispers. He could feel the eyes of the pro-heroes in the stands. He could feel Mount Lady, Kamui Woods, and even Endeavor scrutinizing him. They weren't looking at a student, they were assessing a threat. Midnight stood on the stage, cracking her whip. Silence. Now, for the athlete's pledge. Bakugo was supposed to give the pledge, having placed first in the entrance exam. But as he walked up, he paused next to Izuku. He glared at the black arm, then marched up to the mic. I pledge, Bakugo said, that I'm going to crush the freak with the metal arm. And then I'll crush the rest of you. The crowd booed. Izuku sighed. At least Kaken was consistent. Now! Midnight shouted, spinning the lottery wheel. The first event is the obstacle race. The obstacle race. The tunnel was cramped. Students were elbowing each other, vying for position. Start! The chaos was immediate. Todoroki froze the ground instantly, trapping the rear half of the pack. He surged forward, sliding on the ice. Bakugo blasted over him, flying through the air. Izuku was stuck in the ice. His feet were frozen solid. Damn it! Mineta cried out next to him. I can't move! Izuku didn't panic. He looked down at his feet. Minotaur's might. He didn't channel one for all throughout his body. He just flexed his right hand and slammed it into the ice at his feet. Crack! It wasn't just the ice that broke. The concrete beneath the ice shattered. A shockwave rippled outward, freeing Mineta, Aoyama, and half of Class 1B, but knocking them off their feet in the process. Izuku was free. He sprinted. He didn't use full call 5% for speed. He found that the relic weighed him down if he moved lightly, but if he ran with heavy, driving steps, the relic's momentum carried him. He ran like a linebacker, head down, shoulders forward. Obstacle 1, the Robo Inferno. The 0-pointers from the entrance exam blocked the path. Massive, towering machines of destruction. Todoroki froze one in a precarious balance and ran underneath. Bakugo flew over another. Izuku arrived at the base of a robot. It targeted him, its red eye glowing. A massive metal fist slammed down. Izuku didn't dodge. Smash! He met the robot's fist with his own right uppercut. Clang! The sound was deafening. The collision of metal on metal sent sparks raining down like fireworks. Usually, punching a giant robot would shatter a human arm. But the relic of Asterion absorbed the kinetic energy instantly. It drank the shock. The robot's arm didn't just stop, it crumpled. The force of Izuku's punch traveled up the limb, blowing out the hydraulic joints in the elbow and shoulder. The massive machine tipped backward, falling with a tremendous crash. Izuku didn't stop to admire his work. He scrambled up the fallen robot's chest, using his claws to dig into the metal plating for grip, and launched himself off its head. Incredible! President Mike shouted. Midoriya Izuku just punched a 0-pointer in the face. That's raw power, listeners. Obstacle 2, the fall. The tightropes. Students were carefully balancing, crawling across the ropes connecting the rock pillars. Izuku looked at the gap. The relic felt heavy. Balancing on a rope would be impossible with the uneven weight distribution. Jump, the instinct said. Izuku stepped back. He channeled one for all into his legs, 10%. He launched himself. He cleared the first gap, landing on a rock pillar. He didn't land gracefully. He landed like a meteor. The rock cracked under his feet. He jumped again. And again. He was a cannonball, ignoring finesse for pure, destructive trajectory. Obstacle 3, the minefield. This was where the lead pack was stalled. Bakugo and Todoroki were fighting, pushing each other, trying to avoid the mines. Izuku reached the edge of the field. Mines, he muttered. Explosives. The relic pulsed. Food. Izuku's eyes widened. The relic absorbed kinetic energy. Explosions were just heat and kinetic energy. He didn't slow down. He didn't look for a safe path. He charged. Deku! Don't be an idiot! Bakugo screamed as he saw Izuku sprinting straight for a cluster of mines. Izuku stomped his right foot down on a mine. Boom! Pink smoke and flame erupted. But instead of being blown backward, Izuku leaned into it. He swept his right arm through the explosion. The black metal glowed red for a split second, sucking in the force of the blast. He used the energy. He channeled the absorbed shockwave out of his palm behind him, a makeshift thruster. Vroom! He rocketed forward. He stepped on another mine. Boom! Absorbed. Redirected. He was a human engine, fueled by the obstacles meant to stop him. He tore through the pink smoke, a black and green blur. Todoroki and Bakugo stopped fighting each other, their eyes wide as Izuku bulldozed past them. He wasn't being clever. He wasn't using a piece of robot as a shield. He was simply unbreakable. Get back here! Bakugo roared, blasting after him. But it was too late. Izuku crossed the finish line, skidding to a halt, his arms smoking, the asphalt tearing up beneath his boots. First place. President Mike announced. Izuku Midoriya. The crowd cheered, but it was a different kind of cheer than usual. It was awed, shocked. They weren't cheering for an underdog. They were cheering for a tank. Izuku looked at his hand. He wasn't panting from exhaustion. The relic had eaten the stress. He felt wired. The cavalry battle. 10 million points, Midnight announced, licking her lips. The target is on Midoriya's head. The field turned predatory. Every eye locked onto Izuku. I need a team, Izuku muttered. Usually, nobody would want to team with the person in first place. But this time, it was different. People were scared of him. Deku-kun, Uraraka ran up to him. Let's team up, Uraraka-san, Izuku exhaled, the tension in his chest loosening. Are you sure? Everyone will be coming for us. That makes it exciting, she said, though her hands were shaking slightly. I will join you as well, Tokoemi said, stepping out of the crowd. Dark shadow hovered over his shoulder, looking intently at Izuku's arm. My dark shadow resonates with your artifact. It feels a kinship with the darkness. Kinship? Izuku asked nervously. And I need a baby to show off my babies. Mei Hatsum slammed into Izuku, grabbing his right arm. Look at this design. Pre-quirk era metallurgy. I need to see how it interacts with my hover saws. The formation. Rider Izuku front, wings, Uraraka and Tokoemi, rear guard / mobility. Hatsum, start. Immediately, Team Tetsu and Team Hagakure charged. Coming through. Tetsu yelled, his skin turned to steel. Dark Shadow. Tokoemi commanded. But before Dark Shadow could strike, Izuku raised his right arm. Back off. He swung his arm in a wide arc. He didn't touch them. But the air pressure generated by the heavy limb created a gust of wind that knocked Team Hagakure off balance. Target acquired, Hatsum yelled. Escape maneuver. She activated the jetpack. They shot into the air. He's flying, Uraraka-san, make us weightless. Izuku commanded. For 10 minutes, it was a game of keep away. But in the final minute, they were cornered. Team Todoroki blocked their path. I'm taking it now, Todoroki said. Ida, in the front of Todoroki's formation, revved his engines. Recipro burst. They were too fast. Izuku couldn't dodge. Todoroki reached out, his hand glowing with ice, aiming for the headband on Izuku's neck. Izuku's eyes widened. He's going to take it. I'm going to lose. I'm weak. No. The voice roared. The domain is yours. The world slowed down. Izuku didn't think about one for all. He thought about the maze. He thought about how much he wanted Todoroki to be far away. The relic flared with a dark, purple aura. Labyrinth domain, distortion. Todoroki's hand was inches from the headband. He thrust forward, but his hand didn't connect. To Todoroki, it looked like the distance suddenly stretched. The space between his fingers and Izuku's neck elongated, warping like a funhouse mirror. He swiped at air, missing by a foot, even though he should have made contact. What? Todoroki gasped, his depth perception failing him. Now, Tokoyami! Izuku shouted. Dark Shadow lunged, slapping Todoroki's hand away. Time's up! Present Mike screamed. The warp effect vanished. Todoroki blinked, disoriented. He looked at his hand, then at Izuku. You! Todoroki whispered. You bent space? Izuku collapsed onto his teammates as they landed. He felt nauseous. The labyrinth ability, it messed with his inner ear. We kept it, Uraraka cheered, hugging him. We're in first place. Izuku looked at the relic. The purple glow faded, returning to the starflecked black. It defended me, Izuku thought. But that wasn't physics. That was magic. Intermission, the beast feeds. The cafeteria was bustling, but Izuku sat alone at a table in the corner. He had 4 bowls of katsudon in front of him. He was starving. The relic consumed calories at a terrifying rate. Midoriya. Izuku looked up, a piece of pork in his mouth. Endeavor stood there, his flames raging, casting long shadows over the table. Endeavor-san! Izuku gulped. I watched your performance, the number 2 hero said. He looked at the black arm. That power, it is brutal. Effective. It reminds me of the old stories. The power to crush without consequence. I'm trying to be a hero, Izuku said defensively. Power is power, Endeavor said, turning to leave. Whether it comes from a quirk or a curse. My son has the perfect quirk, but he refuses to use his fire. You have a cursed object, and you embrace it. Perhaps you are a better rival for him than I thought. Don't disappoint me. Crush him, so he learns he needs his fire. Izuku stared at his empty bowl. Crush him. Everyone keeps using that word. The 1v1 tournament, Izuku vs Shinso. The arena was repaired. The crowd was hyped. First match. Present Mike yelled. The man with the monster arm, Izuku Midoriya. Versus, from General Studies, Hitoshi Shinso. Izuku walked onto the concrete platform. He felt Ojiro's warning in his head. Don't answer him. Shinso stood with his hands in his pockets, looking tired and bored. You're lucky, aren't you? Shinso said. Born with a powerful quirk. And then, gifted a legendary artifact. You're blessed by the gods of this world. Izuku clamped his mouth shut. That monkey, Ojiro, Shinso continued. He was an idiot to drop out. He threw away his chance because of pride. It's pathetic. Izuku felt a spike of anger. Ojiro was noble. Don't say it, Izuku told himself. He's just a loser, Shinso sneered. Just like everyone else who doesn't have what you have. Don't talk about him like that. Izuku shouted. Immediately, his mind went blank. The world turned gray. His body froze. I win, Shinso sighed. Turn around and walk out of bounds. Izuku's body turned. His legs moved on their own. Stop, Izuku screamed internally. Move, but the connection to his muscles was severed. He was a passenger in his own body. He walked toward the white line. Help me! One for all! In the misty void of his mind, Izuku saw the vestiges. He saw the glowing lights of the previous users. But they were distant, obscured by a thick black fog. Between Izuku and the one for all users stood a massive gate. And guarding the gate was him, a towering figure, 15 feet tall. The body of a man, rippling with muscles that looked like carved obsidian. The head of a bull, with horns that scraped the sky of his mindscape, Asterion. The beast was chained, thick shackles binding his wrists and ankles. But he was awake. You submit? The beast roared. The sound wasn't a noise. It was an earthquake in Izuku's brain. You let the weakling control the bearer? No! Izuku thought. I want to win. Then rage, Asterion bellowed. Anger breaks chains. The beast pulled on its chains. In the real world, Izuku's fingers, the ones on the relic, twitched. Huh! Shinso frowned. You shouldn't be able to move. Inside the mindscape, the Minotaur reared back and slammed its fists into the invisible wall of Shinso's influence. Roar! Izuku stopped walking 2 inches from the line. He turned around slowly. His movements were jerky, mechanical. His eyes were rolled back, showing only white. But the relic was glowing so bright it was blinding. Walk out! Shinso yelled, panicking. I said walk out. Izuku opened his mouth. It wasn't Izuku's voice. Silence. A shockwave erupted from Izuku's body. It wasn't one for all. It was pure, concentrated intimidation. A physical blast of killing intent. The wind pressure knocked Shinso off his feet. He tumbled backward, landing hard on the concrete. The brainwashing broke instantly. Izuku gasped, sucking in air, his eyes returning to normal. He looked at Shinso, who was terrified, scrambling backward. What are you? Shinso whispered. Izuku looked at his hand. The relic was smoking. The fingers of the gauntlet had dug into his own palm, drawing blood. The pain had helped, but the beast had done the heavy lifting. Izuku panted. He didn't finish the sentence. He looked at Shinso. You have a great quirk, Izuku said, his voice hoarse. But you can't control a mind that is already occupied. Shinso stared at him. Occupied? I have a monster in here. Izuku tapped his temple, then his arm. And he doesn't like roommates. Izuku stepped forward. He didn't use one for all. He grabbed Shinso's collar with his left hand, the human one, and tossed him out of bounds. Midoriya wins. Midnight announced, though she sounded shaken. The crowd was silent for a moment, then erupted into confused applause. They had seen the boy break mind control by simply being scarier than the brainwasher. Izuku walked back to the tunnel. He was trembling. That wasn't the vestiges helping him. The vestiges felt like hope. That presence, that was pure hate. And for a second, it had felt good. As he walked into the darkness of the tunnel, he saw All Might waiting for him. All Might looked pale. Young Midoriya, All Might said softly. That shout. I know, Izuku whispered, clutching his cursed arm. It wasn't me. We need to be careful, All Might said, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. The more you use it, the more the labyrinth opens. You must not lose yourself in the maze. I won't, Izuku said. But as he looked down, he saw his reflection in the polished black metal of the relic. For a split second, the reflection wasn't a boy with green hair. It was the bull, and the bull was smiling. The concrete hallway leading to the stadium entrance was cool and damp, a stark contrast to the feverish heat radiating from Izuku Midoriya's right arm. He stood in the shadows, leaning his forehead against the rough wall. The roar of the crowd vibrated through the stone, a rhythmic chanting that sounded less like excitement, and more like the baying of a Colosseum mob hungry for blood. Thump. 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 The pulse wasn't coming from his chest. It was coming from the relic. Izuku looked down. In the dim light, the relic of Asterion seemed to breathe. The star-flecked black metal, usually jagged and cold to the eye, was shifting. The tectonic plates of the gauntlet were sliding over one another with microscopic precision, preparing for impact. The red eyes of the embossed bull on his forearm were wide open, glowing with a low, menacing luminescence that cut through the gloom. It's hungry, Izuku whispered to the empty corridor. He flexed his fingers, the black, clawed tips scraping against the concrete wall, leaving deep gouges without any resistance. He was scared. In the fight against Shinso, he had lost time. He remembered the anger, the indignation on Ojiro's behalf, and then, a gap. A void filled with the sound of chains breaking and a roar that didn't belong to a human throat. When he came to, Shinso was looking at him not as a rival, but as a monster. Now, he had to face Shoto Todoroki, the strongest student in the class. A boy made of ice and fire, carrying a mountain of trauma. Midoriya. The voice was deep, echoing with the authority of a king. Izuku jumped, spinning around. Endeavor stood at the junction of the hallway. The flame hero was wreathed in his signature fire, his turquoise eyes burning with an intensity that made the air shimmer. But he wasn't looking at Izuku's face. He was staring, transfixed, at the relic. Endeavor-san, Izuku stammered, instinctively hiding the arm behind his back. Do not hide it, Endeavor commanded, stepping closer. The heat from his flames clashed with the cold aura of the tunnel. That artifact. I felt its pressure from the stands. It is a weapon of the old world, a tool of absolute dominance. It's support gear, Izuku lied weakly. It is power, Endeavor corrected. My son Shoto, he rejects his power. He fights with half a soul, believing he can stand at the top with only his mother's ice. He insults me, and he insults the hierarchy of heroes with his petulance. Endeavor loomed over Izuku, his shadow stretching long and distorted against the wall. You have a beast on your arm, boy. I saw how you broke the mind controller. You didn't use technique. You used terror. You crushed his will. I didn't mean to. Do it again, Endeavor hissed. Be the obstacle that ice alone cannot break. Force him to use his left side. Push him until he has no choice but to burn you, or be destroyed. If you are truly All Might's protege, then do your job. Raise the bar so high that he must ascend to meet it. Endeavor turned and walked away, his flames trailing behind him like a royal cape. Izuku stood trembling. But it wasn't fear of Endeavor that shook him. It was the reaction of the relic. At the mention of burning and destruction, the relic had purred. A wave of dopamine hit Izuku's brain, a chemical reward for the anticipation of violence. The artifact didn't care about Shoto's trauma or Endeavor's abuse. It only heard challenge. Start! Present Mix's voice boomed from the speakers outside. The second match of the semifinals. The Ice Prince versus the Iron Beast. Shoto Todoroki versus Izuku Midoriya. Izuku took a deep breath. He slapped his cheeks with his left hand. I am in control, he muttered. I am a hero. I am going to save him. He walked out into the blinding sun. The arena was a vast slab of concrete, scarred from previous matches but repaired by cementas. Across the field, Shoto Todoroki stood waiting. His expression was unreadable, a mask of cold indifference. But the air around him was already freezing, mist curling off his right side. Ready? Midnight raised her hand. Start. The instant the word left her lips, the world turned white. Todoroki didn't hesitate. He stomped his right foot, unleashing a glacier. It was faster and larger than anything he had used before. A tidal wave of jagged ice surged across the arena, swallowing the ground, aiming to entomb Izuku in a mountain of frost before he could take a single step. The crowd gasped. It was the same move that had defeated Zero instantly. Izuku didn't move. He didn't dodge. Inside the relic, the presence woke up. Cold, it sneered. Brittle. Izuku planted his feet. He felt the one for all amplify the muscles in his legs, grounding him. He pulled his right arm back. The black metal plates clamped down, locking his bones into a structure denser than titanium. Smash! He punched the air directly in front of him. Crack boom. It wasn't just a shockwave. The relic absorbed the kinetic energy of the punch, compressed it, and fired it like a cannonball. The air pressure hit the advancing glacier. Usually, ice shatters. This ice vaporized. A tunnel was bored straight through the center of the ice mountain, blasting a path of clear air directly to Todoroki. The backlash of wind tore the rest of the glacier apart, sending massive chunks of ice raining down into the stands like hail. Todoroki's eyes widened. He threw up an arm to shield his face from the wind. When the dust cleared, Izuku was standing exactly where he had started. Steam rose from the black gauntlet. He hadn't taken a step. He stopped it? Mineta shrieked in the stands. He didn't even break a finger. It's the armor, Yayarosa whispered, leaning over the railing, her eyes glued to the gauntlet. It's absorbing the recoil. Midoriya is using 100% power output, but the artifact is negating the Newtonian reaction. He's a human artillery cannon. On the field, Todoroki grit his teeth. So, you're going to brute force your way through. Just like my father. He launched another wave of ice, this time sharper, faster spikes aimed to impale. Izuku began to walk. He didn't run. He walked. As the ice spikes reached him, he swatted them aside with the back of his gauntlet. Clang! Clang! Smash! The ice shattered against the star metal like glass against a tank hull. Izuku walked through the barrage, his eyes glowing with green lightning, the red eyes of the bull burning on his arm. Is that all? Izuku shouted. The voice was his, but the cadence was aggressive. You're trembling, Todoroki. Is the cold getting to you? Shut up! Todoroki yelled. He ran forward, sliding on an ice path, trying to flank Izuku. He closed the distance, aiming to freeze Izuku's legs. Izuku reacted with terrifying speed. He spun, swinging his right arm in a clothesline arc. Todoroki ducked just in time. The clawed fist passed inches over his head. The wind pressure alone cut Todoroki's cheek. He's fast, Todoroki thought, sliding backward. Usually, power types are slow. But that arm, it's pulling him. You're looking at the arm, Izuku said, stepping forward. You're analyzing the weapon. But you're ignoring the person. Why are you holding back? I'm not holding back. Todoroki fired a concentrated blast of ice breath. Izuku punched through it, scattering the snow. He was 10 feet away now. Yes, you are! Izuku roared. You're shivering. You're reaching your limit. Use your left side. Never! Todoroki screamed. I will never use his power. It's not his. Izuku lunged. He grabbed Todoroki's ice-covered arm with his left hand, his human hand. The cold burned him, but he didn't let go. It's yours, Todoroki. You are the one freezing. You are the one suffering. Why are you letting him win by chaining yourself? Chains. The word echoed in the labyrinth of Izuku's mind. Deep within the artifact's connection, the beast heard the word chains. The beast hated chains. The beast remembered the dark, the binding, the loneliness. Break the chains, the relic screamed into Izuku's nervous system. Free him. Shatter the cage. Suddenly Izuku's vision swam. The arena floor seemed to twist. The white lines of the court began to spiral. The labyrinth domain activated. To the audience, nothing changed physically. But to Todoroki, the world warped. Todoroki looked at Izuku. Suddenly Izuku seemed miles away, yet looming right in front of him. The space between them folded like origami. What? Todoroki stumbled, his equilibrium failing. What is this? You want to reject your fire? Izuku's voice boomed, sounding like it was coming from every direction at once. You want to stay in the cold? Fine. I'll break the cold. Izuku pulled back his right fist. The relic opened its vents. Dark, purple smoke hissed out, mixing with the green lightning. Full cowl. Asterion drive. Izuku struck the ground. He didn't hit Todoroki. He hit the floor between them. Dum. The arena floor didn't crack, it liquefied. A shockwave of distorted gravity rippled outward. The stone turned into a wave of debris that rose up and crashed down on Todoroki. Todoroki instinctively threw up a massive ice wall to protect himself. The debris wave hit the ice wall. The impact was so heavy that the entire stadium shook. Samantha stood up in his booth, his hands gripping the console. This is getting dangerous. Midnight. I know! Midnight shouted, reaching for her whip. In the dust cloud, Todoroki was coughing. His ice wall was shattered. He was on his knees. Frostbite was creeping up his right side. He was shaking violently now. Through the dust, a silhouette walked toward him, a boy with glowing green eyes. And behind him, a towering shadow of a horned beast, formed from the dust and the heat haze. Stand up! Izuku yelled. He sounded desperate, almost manic. Fight me! Don't you want to be a hero? Don't you want to be number one? How can you be number one if you can't even handle me? Todoroki looked up. He saw the monster. He saw the sheer, overwhelming force of nature bearing down on him, and he remembered his mother. He remembered the kettle. He remembered the hatred. But looking at Midoriya, he didn't see endeavor. He saw someone who was crying. Tears were streaming down Izuku's face, even as his fists glowed with terrifying, lethal power. You're crying, Todoroki whispered. Everyone is giving it their all. Izuku screamed, swinging his fist to clear the smoke. To achieve their dreams. To be someone. And you want to win with half your power? You want to reject your own blood? Screw that. It's your quirk, Shoto. It's yours. The memory unlocked. His mother's voice. You are not a prisoner of your blood. It's okay to become who you want to be. The ice on Todoroki's right side shattered. Flames erupted from his left. A pillar of fire shot into the sky, incinerating the remaining ice, blasting away the dust, and bathing the arena in a blinding orange glow. The heat was intense, washing over the front rows of the audience. Yes! Endeavor roared from the stands, his own flames flaring in response. Shoto! Todoroki stood up. His uniform burned away on the left side. He was smiling, a wild, liberated look in his eyes. You're crazy, Midoriya, Todoroki said, tears evaporating from his face instantly. Helping your enemy, you really are crazy. Finally Izuku grinned. The tears were still falling, but the grin was fierce. Come on, don't blame me for what happens next, Todoroki warned. He unleashed everything. A massive wave of ice from the right, a torrential blast of fire from the left. The two elements spiraled together, creating a thermal expansion explosion, a phreatic blast. Izuku looked at the incoming storm. The relic pulsed. It was screaming with joy. It loved the fire. It loved the chaos. Take it, the beast urged. Take it all. Izuku didn't dodge. He couldn't. He needed to meet this head-on. He pulled his right arm back. The one for all energy pulled into the gauntlet. 5%. 20%. 40%. One for all. The black metal began to glow white-hot. The starflex ignited, turning into blinding pinpricks of energy. Cementos slammed his hands onto the podium. Midnight. Stop them. That arm, it's going to kill him. I can't get close. Midnight shielded her eyes. Izuku screamed. Minotaur. Todoroki screamed. Prominence. They rushed at each other. The world narrowed down to a single point of contact. The fire and ice storm met the black metal fist. Smash! Kaboom! The sound was gone. It was too loud to hear. There was only white light and a shockwave that blew the hats off people in the top row of the stadium. 3 layers of cement walls erected by Cementos were pulverized instantly. The blast hurled Midnight backward. For a moment, there was silence. Just the ringing in thousands of ears. Then, the smoke began to clear. The center of the arena was gone. There was a crater, 10 meters deep, lined with glass where the sand and stone had melted. At the edge of the crater, Shoto Todoroki lay unconscious. His shirt was gone, his body bruised, but he was breathing. He had been blown out of the epicenter by the shockwave. In the center of the crater stood Izuku Midoriya. He was still standing. His right arm was raised, fist clenched. But something was wrong. Izuku wasn't moving. His hero uniform, the P-kit, was shredded on the right side. His skin was scorched. Slowly Izuku turned his head. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated to pinpricks. He looked down at his arm. The relic of Asterion was hissing. A crack had appeared on the surface of the black metal. A hairline fracture running from the bull's head to the wrist. From the crack, a dark, tar-like substance was leaking out, bubbling as it touched the air, and for the first time since putting it on, Izuku felt pain. The scream tore from his throat, raw and blood-curdling. It wasn't the scream of a hero. It was the scream of an animal caught in a trap. The relic wasn't just hot, it was boiling. Having absorbed the full force of Todoroki's thermal explosion and the output of One for All, the capacitor had overloaded. It was dumping the excess heat directly into Izuku's nervous system. Make it stop. Izuku dropped to his knees, clutching his right wrist with his left hand. Get it off. Get it off me, he clawed at the metal. His fingernails broke against the obsidian surface. He banged his arm against the ground, trying to shatter it, trying to dislodge the parasite. Midoriya! Midnight was there first. She ripped her sleeve, releasing her somnambulist gas directly into his face. Sleep! She commanded, fear evident in her voice. Stop fighting it. Izuku coughed, inhaling the pink mist. His vision blurred. The pain was distant now, but the voice in his head was loud. The beast was angry. It was hurt. It wanted to lash out. They hurt us, the voice growled. Kill them. No, Izuku mumbled, his eyes rolling back. No killing. He slumped forward, falling into the dirt. The relic continued to hiss, the black tar staining the ground beneath him. President Mike didn't announce the winner immediately. The crowd didn't cheer. They stared in horrified silence at the boy who had won, but looked like he had lost everything. Winner. Midnight announced, her voice wavering. Izuku Midoriya. The infirmary an hour later. The room was silent except for the beeping of monitors. Recovery Girl stood by the bed, her face grim. All Might sat in a chair in the corner, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Izuku lay on the bed. His right arm was suspended in a containment sling designed for hazardous materials. The crack in the relic had sealed itself, but the metal looked duller, darker. The heat nearly cooked his nerves, Recovery Girl said softly. If the artifact hadn't reabsorbed the thermal energy at the last second to repair itself, his arm would be dead tissue right now. It protected him, All Might whispered. To save its host. It's not protection, Tashinori, Recovery Girl snapped. It's self-preservation. It's a parasite, Izuku stirred. His eyes fluttered open. All Might? I'm here, my boy. All Might moved to the bedside instantly. Izuku looked at the ceiling. Todoroki? Is he? He is fine, Recovery Girl said. Exhausted, mild burns, but Recovery Girl magic fixed him up. He's resting in the next room. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. I saved him. He used his fire. You did, All Might said. But his tone was heavy. You saved his heart, young Midoriya. But you nearly destroyed his body. And yours. Izuku looked at his right arm. It felt heavy again. The warmth was gone, replaced by a cold, sullen weight. I felt it, Izuku whispered. In the fight. It changed the room. The distance kept changing. I made a maze. The labyrinth domain, All Might nodded. One of Asterion's abilities. It warps spatial perception. It isolates the prey. I tried to stop, Izuku said, tears leaking from his eyes. When I punched. I tried to pull back. But the arm, it pushed forward. It wanted to hit him. It wanted to kill him. He looked at All Might, his green eyes full of terror. I can't control it, All Might. The more I use One for All, the more it wakes up. It likes the power. It eats it. If I keep this, I'm going to hurt someone. I'm going to be a villain. No, All Might said firmly. He placed his large hand on Izuku's head. You are not a villain. You are a hero fighting a battle on two fronts. The world outside, and the world inside. But I can't take it off. Izuku sobbed. It won't let go. The door slid open. Bakugo Katsuki stood there. He was still in his gym uniform. He looked at Izuku crying, then at the black arm. Kaken? Izuku sniffed. Bakugo didn't yell. He didn't scoff. He walked into the room, ignoring the protests of Recovery Girl. He stopped at the foot of the bed. You won, Bakugo said. His voice was flat. You beat Icy Hot at his best, Bakugo continued. He used the fire. And you still smashed him. Bakugo looked at the relic. His eyes narrowed. That thing, it nearly snapped, didn't it? I saw the crack. Izuku nodded. So it has a limit, Bakugo muttered, more to himself than anyone else. It's not invincible. If it can break, it can be beaten. He looked Izuku in the eye. Don't you dare lose the next round, Deku. Because I'm going to be the one to shatter that piece of junk off your arm. Bakugo turned and left as abruptly as he had arrived. Izuku stared at the door. He wants to save me, Izuku realized. In his own way. He wants to win, All Might corrected with a small smile. But yes. He sees the problem. The relic is strong, but it is brittle. It cannot handle the full weight of One for All forever. So I have to break it, Izuku whispered. I have to get strong enough to break my own armor. He clenched his left fist. I have to master One for All. Not to use the relic, but to destroy it. Down in the dark metal of the gauntlet, a low thrum answered. A challenge. Try it, bearer. Try and break me. Meanwhile, in a bar in Kamino, Tamura Shigaraki watched the replay of the sports festival on a small monitor. He watched the black gauntlet absorb the fire. He watched the Minotaur silhouette rise from the dust. He scratched his neck, his skin flaking. Kurogyri, Shigaraki rasped. Yes, Tamura Shigaraki? That item, Shigaraki pointed a decaying finger at the screen. It's a cheat item. It's a legendary drop. It doesn't belong on a hero student. It belongs to the final boss. Master All for One has expressed interest, Kurogyri said, wiping a glass. He recognized it. Good, Shigaraki grinned, a horrific expression that stretched his scars. When we attack the forest, we aren't just killing All Might's spirit. We're looting the corpse. I want that arm.